DeMatha Nation. My name is Connor Glowacki. I'm a current staff member here at DeMatha. And over the past few months, we've interviewed several notable stags, alumni, former faculty members, not just as a way to showcase the various successes of the school, but also to give a chance for the DeMatha community to stay connected during these times we're living in. And today I'm joined by fellow staff member Ben Fleri, class of 2011, and faculty member Michael Curran, class of 1999, who will be helping me conduct today's interview with former longtime teacher at DeMatha, Richard Macheski. Rich taught at DeMatha for 39 years, from 1977 to 2016. And Rich began teaching reading and 2 history classes, went on to teach U.S., world, and European history, as well as starting a well-received male spirituality class throughout his 39 years of dedicated service to DeMatha. In 1985, Rich was named the history department chair, and in that same year, founded the first-year teacher mentoring program, which continues to this day. In 1990, Rich received the inaugural Father James Day Award for teaching and the inaugural Collins Wooten Chair of Teaching Excellence in 2001. In 2007, Rich received the most prestigious Washington Area Educators Award, the Agnes Meyer Outstanding Teacher Award for Private Schools for the year 2007, presented by the Washington Post Educational Foundation. And in 2005, he was inducted to the DeMatha Hall of Fame in recognition of his teaching expertise and activities that included summer school, bingo, mock trial, and several faculty committees. There's a lot of things we could talk about with Rich here. Rich had made him such a beloved and legendary figure in DeMatha history. His tireless work in the classroom, his energy and vigor and dedication that he brought to each class was and still is unmatched. At Rich's farewell reception in May 2016, Dr. McMahon showed his appreciation with a few truisms. Quote, "I am sad for the future students of DeMatha who won't have Rich as a teacher, but there will always be a part of him that exists in all of us." And with all that said, we'd like to introduce you, Rich. Thanks for joining us today. And we were talking before the recording started, how you're holding up. You actually were traveling in Belgium just as the pandemic was starting, and you made it back to the U.S. just before the country went on lockdown. So how have you been holding up?
In the big scheme of things, my wife and I have been very blessed because one, we're retired. 2, our health has been good. And so just getting a little antsy now, but in the big scheme of things, that's nothing. So I have nothing to complain about. And one of the hardest things is not being able to be around our grandkids. But it's for a good cause, but still it's hard.
Now, Rich, you're a native of Pennsylvania. And
yes, I am.
And we know you did a lot of teaching before DeMatha. So how did you hear about the school, DeMatha, and what made you want to
are you talking about
here?
the first time I heard about the school?
How about you can give us the full story?
Okay, the first time I heard about the school, I was 17, 18, and I was on Bishop McDevitt's football team, believe it or not, and I was a defensive end. Can you imagine what trouble they were in? And now I didn't start or anything. I was a sub. But anyway, and believe it or not, for a homecoming game senior year, guess who they scheduled to play? DeMatha High School. Who made that schedule, right? Well, we played them, and the score was 28-0, and it was not our way. So that was my first experience with DeMatha. The next game they had scheduled was St. John's. Needless to say, we did not do well in either game, but that was my first exposure. My next exposure was I was in need of a job, so I just sent my resume around to various schools, and John Morton was the first one to call me, and I considered his call the voice of God. For me, the voice of God was John Morton, because it just worked out really well, phenomenally well. Never expected anything like it.
Now, Rich, At your time at DeMatha, now was there, maybe a specific coworker or student or someone that really had a big impact on you during your time at DeMatha that maybe sticks out in your mind?
Yeah, John Moylan. John Moylan. When I started, to be honest with you, I did not have a very positive view on authority. And John was really, he taught me a lot. He taught me a lot about teaching. He taught me a lot about being a principal, how to manage things. I always appreciated the freedom that he gave us in the classroom. He treated us like adults. His door was always open to us. Not that he agreed with you, or not that we agreed with him, but his famous line was, "We can disagree without being disagreeable." And just it was an experience that I absolutely consider myself blessed for.
So Rich, you of course are well known for teaching history and social studies, world, US, honors European, and that's what a lot of us, the alumni, remember about your class. But later on, you ended up developing a male spirituality course, which I had the privilege of observing often because we were sharing the classroom. I'm in here now, so that was really a treat for me. But how did that idea originally come about, developing this sort of alternate course, maybe outside of the traditional social studies curriculum?
It was during the summertime, and I can't remember what year it was. And I was painting the house. And, painting, there's not a lot to be thinking about, which is a good thing to it. But the bad thing was there's nothing much to think about. So I discovered this this retreat given by Father Richard Rohr, Franciscan priest, who has spent years and years working with men's spirituality. And I listened to it. And as I'm listening to it, it's moving me, it's stirring me inside. I'm saying, wow, this is really good stuff. And then I said to myself, Macheski, you teach all boys. Why don't you do a course on male spirituality for seniors? Because at that age, they are reflecting on who they are, where they're going, where they've been, just naturally. And I thought the course would fit in that very well for them to help them through that process. And I went to see Dan McMahon, and Dan said, absolutely, try it, and we'll see how it goes. And so I did a 1 semester, which I think is just long enough. And it was an elective. So the guys are taking it above and beyond everything else that they were doing in their lives, which I just truly found amazing. And I hope it was a good experience for them, because it really meant a lot to me. It resonated with something deep inside that I didn't even know was there. And so, yeah, it was good.
Well,
I just stumbled across it.
Well, we now like to open up the floor to the chat sidebar, and for the Zoom chat sidebar, if you can include your name and your graduating year, that will be, as Ben mentioned earlier, that would be beneficial to us when relaying the questions on to Rich. And so once we get some questions, Rich, I wanted to ask you, was there a certain topic of history you've taught interested you as you were teaching it?
The 20th century spoke to me. Now, the negative part about the 20th century is it is a brutal century. There was so much in there that I don't think it was taught much in a lot of courses. And so, yeah, that would be the major one. But truthfully, each unit I was in, I found something to fall in love with. So, but overall, the 20th century.
Rich, so we have a question from Phil Berger, class of 1996. He wants to know what you're up to currently. I don't know if you have any projects or anything you're doing specifically now, but just wants to know what you're up to these days.
Truly, Phil, first of all, nice to hear from you, Phil. And truly, I'm doing more reading and reflective type of stuff now. I did a men's retreat, a men's workshop about a year or so ago at St. Jude's. That went really well, I thought. My wife and I have been traveling a lot. I've seen a lot of these places I taught and never had been there before. And it's really a treat to have the opportunity to see these places where I've taught before. I mean, we went to Normandy and we spent 5 days there. And really the 5 days was just about the right amount, tears again and again, because it's such a moving experience. I went to Verdun and brought this back from Verdun as a reminder. You know, the barbed wire, it's kind of and the beauty of it was they have a French and German helmet here in honor of both sides, which I thought was good. So traveling and reading and babysitting the grandkids when we had an opportunity to, but not right now. Thank you, Phil.
Well, Rich, we got a question from Patrick, or not less a question, more of a comment from Patrick Benko, class of 99. Quote, per your recommendation, I told my wife that Antietam National Battlefield is a very romantic spot for a picnic. She declined. I'm worried I undersold it.
Absolutely. Couldn't think of a better place. Oh, that's a riot. That is hysterical.
Now, Rich, Jeff Hoffman, class of 1981, he says, hi, Rich. As someone who taught history, can you offer a perspective on this particular time, which will undoubtedly be taught and studied well into the future?
Oh, man. First of all, Jeff, great to hear from you, and congratulations on your awards that you're receiving there. You know, Jeff, I've thought about it, and I don't know how they're going to teach this era. Yeah, I don't know. From my viewpoint, it's not going to be a pleasant thing to teach, and truly, I've been personally scared for the last few years about how things are going, and I don't know. Don't know. That's a great question. Just don't know. And some of it, I'll be honest with you, you know, having film clips, I'm not even sure you could show some of those film clips that we have, you know? Anyway, some reflections on
that. Class of 89. So over your time at DeMatha and over your time in education in general to really perfect your craft?
Good question, Roger. Nice to hear from you. Honestly, I spent a lot of time preparing. Made sure I trying to read as much as I could about a topic and not using a textbook. I hate textbooks because if they give you anything, it's just surface stuff. And the real meat of it is in books that have been written about a topic. So trying to get into the age myself, and the way to do that is through reading a lot about it, and then taking from those books stories that I could share in class. But it took a lot of legwork behind the scenes. But it's also something I enjoyed doing because I enjoyed learning new things myself. So thanks, Roger.
Thanks, Rich. Next question from James Murray, class of 2011. He says, there's a lot of historical questions that I could ask about where we are right now, but what can history teach us about how to sustain and get through these really difficult times?
Again, a good question. Hey, James, how are you doing? That we can get through it. One, that we can get through it. And one of the things for me is that a democracy, as they say, is the best form of government, even though it doesn't always function as smoothly as people would like. But it's a tough form of government to keep and to maintain. You got to stay on top of it. And so for the citizens, in the republic, you can't point fingers at the government. You got to point fingers at yourself if the system isn't working. What are we doing to maintain that the system is working and will continue to work? Outside of that, I'm not sure what else. I think we have to stick with our ideals and just work very hard to protect them and work for the general welfare.
Rich, in our past conversations, you sort of described your teaching style as a storyteller. And storytelling, for me, is really an art or a craft, and it's really sort of the oldest form of history and learning about history. And I think in all of our lives, as a teacher or not, we tell stories around the campfire or at bedtime to our kids. So what do you think, or how do you tell a great story?
Again, have to know the background, spend time knowing the background, finding what stories are there. And then in the actual telling, I personally tried to teach it and present it in such a way that it would be interesting for me to listen to if I were sitting as a student in class. In fact, my first year of teaching did not go very well for me. And I can remember going, what am I doing wrong here? Why isn't it connecting? And it wasn't connecting because I was going from fact to fact to fact to fact. And then I discovered the storytelling, and I said, that's it. History is about stories. And then just throwing myself into the story and try to capture the feel of the story, and then try to convey that to the guys in front of me.
Richard, I got a question from Kirk Taylor, class of '93.
Kirk, how you doing?
And he refers to, especially the New York Times 1619 project. He's wondering if, in your opinion, how should race, culture, and historical facts be presented to students today compared to how it was presented, for our age, generations growing up?
Well, that's one of the things that has radically changed in terms of U.S. history. If you take a look at American history textbook prior to the 1960s, and then look at it post-civil rights, you see a vast difference, because the civil rights taught us something that we needed to go, for one, we needed to go back and re-examine our history, take a look at it with a fresh eye. And the Project 1619, I think, is trying to do that very same thing. And I lost my train of thought there for a second. What was this?
The question was, how should topics like race, culture, and historical facts, how should they be presented to students today?
Well, first of all, I'm in favor of teaching our history, and what I was going through, it was taught from, let's say, the historic people on down, and without bringing in the social aspect of it, without bringing in women, without bringing in African Americans, without bringing in Native Americans, their view of history, and to craft a better picture. You gotta teach the whole pack through the eyes of race too, because it's a key part of our history.
Now, Rich, I have one comment, and then I'm going to ask you a question. So the first is obviously not a question, but so Tim Robinson, class of 1989, says, I've never forgotten watching the news on January 28th, 1986, when you brought the television into the classroom to watch the coverage of the Challenger explosion. Besides history, you also instilled a love of studying current events. So that was just a comment from Tim Robinson, 89.
Well, thanks, Tim. Thank you.
So the question I was going to ask is Phil Berger, 1996. He says, I am not a teacher, as you know, but I am always teaching and mentoring at work. He says, coaching on the soccer field, coaching on the basketball court. He asked if there's any general advice on how to be a better teacher. That's Phil Berger.
I think one of the ways is that, keeping in mind that you're there for the students, and you have to tailor whatever you're doing for the audience in front of you. And I think so many people make a mistake by, I'm teaching knowledge. Well, you can't teach anything unless you unless you relate it to where the audience is at that point in time in their lives. And so it also takes reflection. How am I doing? Is what I'm doing working? And how do I know that? You got to be brave enough to evaluate yourself, ask other people their reflections on it. How did this go? What can I do better? What worked? What went well? And it's a steady craft. You just keep at it.
Rich, there's another comment from Nick Haley, class of 2012.
Hi, Nick.
He says, he said, quote, I want to apologize to you and other teachers during high school, but I wanted to thank you for still putting your time and attention into me and helping shape him to where he is today. And another comment from Jim Turk.
Well, thanks, Nick. It was a real pleasure. Thank you.
And another comment from Jim Turk. He's excited to come and reconnect and glad to hear you're doing well. Go Buckeyes, of course, from
the only flaw in his makeup are the Buckeyes.
But I will ask a question. It's from Andrew. I might be mispronouncing your name. Hippos. I'm probably mispronouncing it, so I apologize in advance. Class of 85. If you can invite any three people from history to a dinner party, who would you choose?
Whoa. I mean, there's a whole bunch of people. But I don't have three, right? One, I think it would be really interesting to talk to Frederick Douglass. I think he had a lot to say. He had a lot going on. He was an amazing human being, I think. I'd like to maybe talk to Hatshepsut, the first female ruler in Egypt, just to find out what that was like from her point of view. And Napoleon, I guess. Okay, I'll throw out Napoleon. What made you invade Russia in a land war, man? Come on. Yeah.
That's great, Rich.
Three off the top of my head, but that's a great question.
Next question from Tim Skirpin, class of 1999.
Hey, Tim.
He asked, what is your perspective on the ways in which history is being revisited and analyzed from a modern cultural/ethical perspective? For example, the motions to rename Columbus Day.
Let me go, first of all, I'm really worried about the United States in terms of social studies because government is being eliminated in a lot of schools. We're a democracy. You gotta know how this notion that, and what I sense is watering down history just to facts You know, just because you give people facts, it doesn't mean it's going to stick in there. I'm, for one, in favor of bringing all different cultures into your class and teaching it from various viewpoints. Because it's all of our history. It's not just not one group of people's history. And decisions that were made had an direct impact on people's lives, sometimes in a positive way, sometimes in a negative way. And that's going to be talked about. Yeah, I can see why people want Columbus statues to fall down. I get it, but also an understanding is that, for better or for worse, we're all here together because of that event. And how do you bring it all in where you're honest and give people a broad perspective and yet touch on the various aspects to it, the good and the bad. And again, I think it has to be inclusive, and I'm in favor of that.
Rich, from John Zick, class of 1995, and you mentioned briefly before the recording, you've been reading a bunch recently. What are some of the books you are reading right now?
Well, behind me are some of the books I've read since retirement. But and one of the books is that it's on Grant. Now, unfortunately, it's really a long book. But I'm telling you, I think Grant, he's my man now, because I think he's been absolutely misunderstood in U.S. history. He did a lot. He overcame a lot in himself, and he overcame it for the right reasons, or he was struggling with it all the time. And so he is an example of personal advancement, personal change. I also think that his administration did a heck of a lot. He talked about it being inclusive. He was as inclusive as you could possibly be at that time. And he did a lot for the freedmen for the first couple of years of his administration. There's one mistake he said I made. He said it was a decision I made from my head and not from my heart, and I blew it, and I'm sorry. And that was at the end of his administration, and it had to do with sending more troops down into the South to protect the African Americans. And he listened to the wrong advice, he said, and I pulled out, and it was a terrible mistake. And because he was actually a very big proponent for African Americans before, during the war, and after the war. Anyway, and I read 2 tomes, books this big, on Admiral Lord Nelson. It was awful. It was one fact after another fact after another fact. And the reason I was reading it, because I wanted to find out about the Battle of Trafalgar more in detail. So I thought all his works would help me with that. I finally get to the Battle of Trafalgar at the very end, right? Didn't learn any more than I knew before I started reading the book. So, yeah. So, but history, when it's written well, I think it's really exciting. If it's not written well, it's a slog.
Rich, you've dedicated a lot of your life to our DeMatha community, and Connor mentioned earlier your 39 years of service here. What was it about DeMatha and our community that made it special for you to dedicate so much of your time and your energy to us?
First of all, I think it goes back to John Moreland. He had a vision that, and it was exciting to be a part of his vision, to be honest with you, on how to run a high school and how to treat faculty members. So that was one. 2, it's a great student body. It's a great student body. It's people who want to learn, even if they don't know they want to learn, is exciting to be around. I always thought that the faculty was the most dedicated group of people I've ever been around. And it was just fun and inspiring to be around people like that who cared so much for the students, for their craft. It was a place that was successful on all the levels. Where do you see that? And for my mind, it was, everybody was striving for excellence. Everybody was. The coaches, the faculty members, band, students, parents who wanted something for their kids, you know? And excellence you can never reach, but it's important to be able to strive for that, to have that as your goal, you know? John Mullins says, we can't always win the game, but we have to be in the game, you know, to have a chance. And I think that's what DeMatha was all about. And trying to translate that to somebody else outside of DeMatha is almost impossible. You know, they don't understand it. And again, it's something I stumbled into. I just consider blessed.
Rich, I have a comment here and then a question, but first a comment. So Jason Thomas, class of 1993, he says, I don't have a question. He says, I joined today to see and listen to you again. You were definitely one of my favorite teachers that had a very powerful influence on me. He says, I'll never forget the day you jumped on your desk, hands in the position as you were holding a rifle and uttered the words, and they mowed them down. As you explained to us, one of the many wars in American history. Glad to see you're doing well. Thanks for taking the time to do this. God bless.
Thank you, Jason. That's really nice.
Jason
Thank
Thomas.
you. Thank you.
And then Jimmy.
I am not jumping on desks anymore. You know, can't do it. Can't do it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jimmy Key, class of 1993, asks, when did you finally know it was time to retire from DeMatha, from teaching at DeMatha? You will always be a pillar of one DeMatha. So is there a specific thing or something that, you know, knew it was time to retire?
Well, there's a couple of things. One, about 4 or 5 years before I did, I'm sitting in the faculty lounge, and for some reason, I kind of looking around. I'm saying, man, these guys are young. And I'm saying, I think that Pat Guerin said that teaching is a young person's profession. And I think there's a lot of truth to that in terms of the energy you bring to it, in terms of kids being able to relate to you. You know, I think that's important. You know, it always amazed me after school or something like that. I'd be walking down the steps and a freshman would pass me and they'd be bounding up the steps or down the steps. And I'd be walking down holding on to the rail. And I said, you know, there is a chasm there between the two of them because of age. And then my wife, I was going to do it for one more year, but my wife retired. And I said, if she's going to retire, we're only young and able to do things for so long, or younger for so long. I don't want to lose that year. So those were the reasons why. And I thought 70 was a good time to retire, but 69 worked too.
Rich, Mark Melvin, class of 1988.
Hey, Mark.
He wants to know who's been your inspiration as a teacher, and what made you want to get into teaching in the first place?
I had this, okay. Prior to DeMatha, I spent 10 years in a seminary and had a teacher there who also happened to be my superior of the house. And he treated us as young men. In fact, when he addressed us, he addressed us as men. Well, that was the first time, and I was in my 20s. That was the first time anybody ever addressed me as a man, you know? And one of his things that he said was, if you're a man at night, you got to be a man in the morning. Which means you can go out and party and all that kind of stuff. But when the morning comes, you got to be responsible enough to be a man and deal with your responsibilities. And I took to that like a duck to water for some reason, you know, just was meaningful to me. And first part of the question?
Who did you have when you were teaching at DeMatha, and just as
Oh, that would be Father Bertie Donahue. I had him in class too, and he was a big man. Yeah, but his mind was he was so intelligent, and he was such a good teacher that when I walked in there, I wanted to know the material because of him. He's the one who actually taught me that I could actually learn and enjoy learning. Plato, Aristotle, Hegel. I said, whoa, this stuff, you know, but it was because of him. And I'd been in classes myself in college where I felt my brain was shrinking because the professor was so bad. And I never wanted to be that for the students. I wanted to be able to show them that they could learn and that learning was exciting. And so.
Real quick, hold on. Curran, I know Curran's going to ask the final question, sorry, but I'm going to ask one more. So Kirk Taylor, 93, asked, were you always as physically spent after a lecture as you looked?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great one.
Go ahead, Curran.
Rich, as Ben mentioned, this is going to be the last question. So again, appreciate your time that you've given us once again.
It's been my pleasure. This has been, I was nervous about this, you know, but it's been good. It's been real good. I appreciate it.
Well, great. I think everyone else out there in the DeMatha community watching now and later on in the recording certainly appreciates you as well. So during this sort of virtual world, and they had time that they normally didn't to come together and reenact scenes that they had done from their popular films. And so for this Throwback Thursday, I was wondering if you could take us to the time machine and give us a short lecture or lesson that you'd like to share with us and take us all back into the classroom.
And I was, okay, that would be about Rasputin.
Sure.
And the death of Rasputin. Okay. I've been struggling with trying to figure out how to do this and can't do it in terms of as well as I'd like on Zoom, but I'll try, okay? Shorten it up. As you know, Rasputin and Russia was in World War I, and Russia was doing badly. They were doing badly. They're losing to the Germans. One and all, if you take a look at Russia, there's no way Russia should have been losing this war. And so Tsar Nicholas II had the idea, what they need is inspiration. I will go to the front and inspire my troops. So he does. He goes to the front to inspire his troops to fight on. And he left his wife, Alexandra, in charge of the country. Now, not there's anything wrong with that. Not there's anything wrong with that, except that Alexandra was under the sway of this monk known as Rasputin. And Rasputin has had issues, as you might recall. He liked women and to save women. And it was believed that he had the power of healing. And that's how he got involved with the Tsar's family, is that he supposedly healed their boy, Alexis, from bleeding. And so she thought of him as a saint. She thought of him and so she was under his sway, and Nicholas was under Alexandra's sway. And a group of men in Russia said, we have got to get rid of it. We've got to save Russia from revolution here. And so the key to it was to assassinate Rasputin. Now, truthfully, you're not just assassinating you or me, you're assassinating the power behind the throne. So how do we do this? So they decided that they would lure him over to one of their houses by saying, my wife would like to be saved by you. and also that he loves sweets. So what they did was they had a cake. They put lots of poison in the cake. They had some wine there to drink. They put lots of poison in the wine to kill, supposedly, several men instantly. And so they're ready for him. He knocks on the door and he says, I'm here. Where's your wife? Well, you know, she's upstairs getting ready to be saved. She'll be down in a while. Why don't you come down in the basement with us? You know? And so I took him downstairs in the basement. And it's, cake, huh? Yeah, would you like a piece of cake? Here you go, we'll give you a little piece of cake here, you know. Oh, and so he does. He takes it and he eats it. And they're all waiting for him. They're all waiting for him to pass out there. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. He takes a drink of wine. Nothing happens. They go, what the heck? They give him a couple more pieces of cake, a couple more drinks of wine. Nothing happens. They don't know what the heck's going on. They go upstairs and they say, what the heck? One guy said, I'll get him. I'll get him. He goes walking downstairs. And there's Rasputin. His back to him. He yells, Rasputin, prepare to meet that guy. He turns, he shoots him in the chest, kills him. Okay. So you go upstairs. We did it. We killed Rasputin. We saved Russia from revolution. We're heroes. And then they decide to go down. You know, what was with this guy? How was he able to do what he did? And as they went downstairs, one reaches down, picks up his head. And as they pick up his head, his eye opens. And then his other eye opens. And they go running out of there. He goes running out the door. I'm going to tell the Tsar. I want to tell the Tsar. Well, they can't let him get away. So they miss. They finally hit him. He screams. He falls. They go running up to him. They start beating him. Take him down. Take him down the river. Cut a hole in the ice. And they drop his body in the ice. They go back. And they say, finally, we've done it. We've killed Rasputin. It saves Russia from revolution. So they think. They said that they discovered his body days later. He was able to untie his hands and it looked like he was in the motion of trying to get himself out of the ice when he finally died. He goes down in history as known as the man who wouldn't die. And they did all that. And Russia had a revolution. The Tsar was thrown from power 3 months later. And there wasn't anybody in Russia who was sad to see the Tsarina go. And the only one who really wept about Rasputin being killed was Alexandra. And that is the story of Rasputin. Sort of.
Well, I don't, as we're seeing with the applause here, I don't think there's any other better way to wrap this up. So, Rich, thanks. Okay,
just real quick. There's a warning, though. His death is being reevaluated. And did he really die that way, or did he not die that way? And, I'm sorry. The Tsar and the Tsarina have been made saints by the Orthodox Christian Church, which I don't get. I don't get it all. And there was even a move to make Rasputin a saint. It didn't happen, but come on, seriously. You know? Anyway.
That's hearing that story for the first time. That was awesome to get a little taste of your lectures from back in the day. So, Rich, thanks for joining us. Everybody on the Zoom, thanks for coming on and listening to Rich and providing questions. And Rich, thanks again for joining us here today.
Guys, thank you. The word love is overused, but truly, love you guys. Appreciate it.
Rich, we hope to have you back on campus sometime when the pandemic ends. But until then, hope you and your family stay safe. And thanks again for joining us here.
Thank you. Wear a mask. Stay distant. Okay.
Thank you, Rich.
Bye, guys.